It's time for the Inside Success Show, an inspirational hour that searches for the simple secrets of success in real-life stories of people who have felt the pain of failure and have gone on to great achievement. Here's your host.
Hi, Randy Gilbert here, and welcome to the Inside Success Show. This is an action-packed hour with exciting guests who share their inside stories of real-life moments and humble beginnings, and more importantly, who give away powerful inside success secrets, tips, and strategies that you, our listeners, can use right away to bring success and abundance into your own lives. Well, inspiration fiction is becoming more and more popular, which I see as a very good thing. It is a truism that we become what we think about most of the time, and therefore positive and uplifting stories are far better for us than those that dwell on the negatives of the world. My next special guest has a wonderfully creative mind and spirit and has dedicated his life to the arts of writing, drawing, and painting. He is in pursuit of his dream to become a screenwriter, and it's a pleasure to have the opportunity to interview a man with a real dream. And if you are a positive person who enjoys inspiration of all forms and are encouraged when you meet another person who is taking action toward pursuing his dreams, then I invite you to join us for this lively chat. I'm introducing James Henry. He's the author of the inspirational novel Corporation U, A Business Plan for the Soul. James has had an interesting background. He worked in the Alaskan fishing industry for almost 4 years. He was a guide dog instructor, a screenwriter, and the press secretary for the presiding officer Paul Tana of the Suffolk County Legislature, where he was responsible for promoting residing officer Tana's many care programs. He was also responsible for promoting the agenda of the entire legislature, both Republicans and Democrats, including that county's $2.3 billion, that's a B, billion-dollar budget. And after leaving politics and government, James finished his master's degree in education and taught for a time at Manhattan East in East Harlem, where he introduced topics by having the students draw cartoons and design comic strips. James is now the author of several screenplays, and he is unafraid of what lies ahead because he knows that personal success, happiness, and authentic abundance will be his reward. Well, James Henry, welcome to the Inside Success Show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Randy. I appreciate the invitation.
Oh, you're very welcome, and it's quite an honor. It's a pleasure to have you on the show, and I really enjoyed your book. I'm looking forward to being able to discuss it, and we're really going to get into the sort of the nitty-gritty of it in the next segment. But this first segment, we really try to sort of get to know the inside story of our guests. So if you could maybe share with our listeners just a little bit more about yourself. I mean, I realized in reading your book that your name, James Henry, is actually a pen name, and could you tell us a little bit about that and why you chose it?
Yeah, sure, definitely. My real name is James Dubkowski, and I guess the readers of Corporation U, A Business Plan for the Soul, will discover that. But the reason that I chose James Henry was I was honored to have fantastic grandparents, and my first name James. I'm named after James Joseph Farrell, who's my mother's father.
Uh-huh.
And then Henry is Henry Dubkowski, my father's father. So, I wanted to carry on their legacy in my career. So, one of the reasons I chose James Henry is to honor them. It was also a name my mom always called me when I got in trouble.
Oh, yeah, so, of course, yeah, just like me, Randall Richard.
Every kid should know that. And secondly, jokingly, I after leaving government and I worked for presiding officer Paul Tony, he could never pronounce Dubkowski, so when I gave him a copy of my book, I told him I chose James Henry, so he has a name he could pronounce me by properly.
Oh, that's smart. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Well, now you're pursuing a writing career, but that certainly wasn't how you started out. Tell our listeners where you started, sort of where you first went to college and why.
Sure. Humbly, I like to use my life as an example of follow your bliss. When I was a kid, I wanted to be the next Marlin Perkins. So, from 7th grade, I knew I wanted to study wildlife biology and become the next great Marlin Perkins. And I went to the University of Montana, and I studied wildlife biology. And I got involved in a film festival that was founded by the great wildlife biologist Charles Jonkel called the International Wildlife Film Festival, which I believe just recently celebrated a huge anniversary. I believe it was their 15th anniversary. And with that, I realized, like, you know what, it's time for me now to study film. So I kind of shocked my family. After my junior year, I transferred to New School University in Manhattan. Two different worlds, Missoula, Montana, and Manhattan, New York.
Yep.
Went to study film with the complete goal of studying documentary filmmaking. You know, I'm quite stubborn, and an advisor just convinced me, like, Jim, just take a screenplay writing class and learn the art of writing for film. Now, I was kind of hesitant because at Montana, I actually received a C in English Comp.
Oh, dear.
And one of the reasons being is I was always creative, but I'm a horrible speller. So on the final, I actually had so many spelling mistakes that throughout the whole semester, I basically had to sit her down and say, no, my best work comes from rewrites. So I was hesitant on taking the screenplay writing class, but I took it, and I discovered that I had a tremendous visual eye. And I got an A, and I got greedy, and I wanted to keep my GPA up, so I kept on taking screenplay writing classes. and actually, that's really where I caught the writing bug. I learned that I had a talent that I wasn't aware of. And from that moment on, I've really been focused on screenplay writing. And, you know, like everything else, it's hard to break into certain professions, and you just had to get creative on how to, you know, find a living. And that's where the Alaskan fishing industry came in. I worked there for 4 years in a small town, Yakutat, Alaska. Smallest city in the world with twice daily jet service was our motto. We actually had 2 flights coming in and a population of 400. So we were proud of that. And then an injury forced me out of that, and I decided to pursue a degree in education. While I was pursuing that degree, the injury that took me out of Alaska actually became worse, and I needed back surgery. And that's where Corporation U kind of starts, right after the back surgery, after having to kind of leave 2 avenues of pursuit that I really enjoyed, the Alaskan fishing industry and graduate school, and that's where kind of my struggle began. Like, what am I supposed to do? What is God's plan for me? And so I take the reader through that period of time in my life.
Right. Well, yeah. I was just going to say that. I mean, the book is very enjoyable, and the fictional character is actually James Henry. So, it appears to be you're in the story as a main character. How much of that main character is you?
A large portion of it. I had a teacher that once taught me that there's no such thing as fiction or nonfiction. It's basically life is a series of stories that's told from a person's point of view. And that includes the seen or what is seen and the unseen. So the first chapter of Corporation U is exactly how it happened. It's in my journal. Everything else, for creative reasons, I had to either edit or refocus or redefined. But it's basically all representative of the truth, what went on in my life at that time. Series of lessons that I learned, and events in my life that actually led me to a better understanding of who I am.
Right. Yeah, and it's a very heartfelt story. I mean, you can really feel the emotion, of the character, and obviously that's something that you're able to write about is your emotion, which is really cool. And we're going to get into the details of it. But first, I'm going to take us to a break, and we'll come back real quick. This is Randy Gilbert on the Inside Success Show, and we are sharing some inside success stories with James Henry. He's the author of Corporation U, A Business Plan for the Soul. And he's already begun giving away some powerful inside success secrets to us, so don't go away. You're going to want to hear what's next.
This is Randy Gilbert, and I have an incredibly powerful inside success secret for you. Highly successful people share a common belief that they need the help and cooperation of others. That is why my friend Michael Angier created SuccessNet. SuccessNet is an information-packed online resource, and I have no hesitation in saying I just can't imagine living without it. Best of all, it's free. Join SuccessNet by typing in theinsidesuccessshow.com and then clicking on the SuccessNet logo.
Let's return to the path to triumph with the Inside Success Show.
And welcome back to the Inside Success Show. This is Randy Gilbert, and we're back sharing stories with James Henry, author of Corporation U, A Business Plan for the Soul. And James, you've written Corporation U as an inspirational novel. I really enjoyed it. Can you share with us more about sort of where that inspiration for yourself came from?
Sure. I have had a lot of people in my life that kind of inspired me, but I would have to say one of the reasons that I kind of sat down and wrote the book, I try to tell everybody the book is actually a letter. It's a letter to my older brother, Robert. He's a fantastic salesman, and I think one of the curses of salesmen is they don't realize it's a gift, and they think they could teach everybody on how to be a salesman. And so I kind of wrote it to show him that, you know what, I understand a lot of the things that you're trying to teach me. Look and read this. But I'm not a salesman. And the second person that kind of inspired it was a great friend of mine, Dave O'Donnell. He was actually my best man at my wedding. And I asked him to read it. At the time, Dave was a city fireman in Manhattan, Engine 75 in the Bronx.
Uh-huh.
And he would always read my stuff. As a writer, one of the greatest gifts is to have somebody in your life who's totally honest with you and let you know if you're right on task with something or not. And he was one of these people that would always tell me, "Hey, listen, you need to work on this, or this is a little weak in this on this part of the story." And one day I just asked him, I said, "Hey, have you read that story yet?" And he actually got angry at me, and he said, "Listen, I'm never going to read any of your stuff again." And I was kind of thrown back.
Wow.
It was just, he was never that negative, but he was being negative in a positive way. And he turned to me, and this was years before September 11th, and he said, it brought me to tears. It was a time before New York City firefighters were allowed to admit that they actually cried. And that just blew me away. And he said, "If you don't do anything with this, you know what? I'm never going to read any of your stuff again. Get off your horse and do something with this." And I fought for a while to get it published, and finally got it published. So, I tell everybody it's kind of a letter to my brother. It was a way to, jokingly get him off my back and prevent, Dave from, kicking my butt a little bit. But so it was inspired by actually two people who were very influential in my life.
Yeah, that's super. And how about some of the other things that you've written, your screenplays or other stories? Is there any other particular source of inspiration?
You know what? Sometimes you don't know where it comes from. Sometimes I'll just be reading the newspaper and a headline will grab me for a topic. I'll give you one example. A screenplay that I had optioned was titled Cloned. I actually took a car ride once with a friend of mine who, as an undergraduate, was a genetics major, and he had this whacked out theory on genetics that almost got him kicked out of school. And so after he explained it to me, and he went on to be a doctor, a very reputable individual. I said, "Wow, that would be a pretty neat story." And just kind of did some research from there. So I don't know where it comes from. Sometimes in life you're given a talent, and either you could bury it or you could go ahead and use it. And I've decided not to bury it.
Yeah. Well, it seems to have a real deep spiritual sense to it.
I try to. My first name, James, like I said, I'm named after my grandfather. I tell people all the time the influence that he had on my life. It was an amazing conversation I had with my brother. We started talking about my grandfather, and I just said, I was thinking about him the other day and his influence on me. He passed away when I was 6 years old, and I would have to say that. And at the time, I was living on Long Island. He was living in Brooklyn, and if anyone's familiar with Long Island, 30 miles is a long way to drive if you live in the city.
Right.
I didn't really see him all that much. Maybe once a month, maybe once every 2 months. And how much do you really remember between birth and 6? And he was my foundation, and it just kind of blew me away that he was so influential in my life. And I think I just kind of carry that along with me. And I think when I sit down and write, one of the first things I think about is, would Grandpa approve of this? And is this something that he would want his grandchild to promote? So I think that helps to a degree, and the foundation that it gives me, I actually tap into and use that for inspiration.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah. Well, it seems that your book is actually almost like a ministry. I mean, that's the way I took it myself. It was something that I felt very deeply. I can't say that it brought me to tears, but certainly was intriguing. Very, very difficult to put it down at all. And and it's a pretty easy read, so it went fairly quickly. But I felt like I needed to keep reading it all the way through. Do you see this as something that you're hoping to accomplish something with your readers?
Yeah, I mean, the first time it was described as a ministry, I kind of had to take a step back, maybe out of humility. I'm not a theologian. I'm not a man of the cloth. But I think sometimes God gives people a certain message to get out. And there's a chapter, the last chapter of the book, called "So Can You," and it basically, the whole premise of that is, it's like, hey, okay, you just learn this message, go out and practice it, and let me know, how it worked, and then I have a webpage, corporationu.com. We'll post them on the webpage. So in a sense, yeah, there is a ministry involved. I wouldn't say I'm the minister. I'm hoping people read it, get their own individual point of view of what was written in the book, and then share it with other people. I think that would be neat, kind of like a living sequel. I almost see a living sequel as a "So Can You," and then hopefully, if we get enough people into the book and into the "So Can You" section, and enough people are posting things on the web page or sending us emails to post, we'll have a sequel that we could share.
That's a great idea, and let's make sure that we give people that website. Of course, it's the name of the book, so it's www.corporationu, and that's YOU.com.
Right.
Corporation, CORPORATIONYOU.com.
Yeah,
Cool.
And there's links that you can go to email me or email for "So Can You." There's also other articles that I wrote, interviews while I was a press secretary and stuff like that. If you just want to learn a little bit more about who I am and what I've been doing.
Great, yeah, that's really good. I appreciate you sharing that. And let's get into some of the characters.
Sure.
Share with our listeners, especially like the opening scene of how you meet Mr. Mel. He is a main character that goes all the way through, and if you can just briefly sort of bring him into the discussion here. Yeah.
Well, the first character actually that you meet in the first chapter is a haunting character called Elias the Giant. And Mr. Mel, I actually meet over a cup of coffee at a 7-Eleven. And he just kind of brings me into his life at a time that I'm actually searching for answers. And I'm actually at a time, and it was a true time. I was dead broke, and I was just kind of looking for something to get me through to the next day. And Mr. Mel just hands me a business card and says, hey, listen, give me a call and maybe I can help you. And I kind of pursue it because I'm looking for a way to just kind of support myself, and through that initial meeting, he just starts teaching me. I'm latched on to the character Mr. Mel because I think this guy is going to help me become a rich individual. And when I say rich, I'm talking about financially rich. And what I eventually learned through his lessons is spiritual richness and the lessons, if you will, of Christianity, or a person who follows a positive mental attitude. So that's how I meet Mr. Mel, just over a cup of coffee, and it kind of, if you want to go to the word Emmanuel, God is among us. It just kind of, I'm trying to bring to the attention of the reader that, you know what, every day you're going to meet somebody that can actually change the way you think and believe, and really pay attention. Because if you, from the first chapter, I discussed with the audience that I'm really not paying attention. I'm so involved in myself and trying to find out what the meaning of life is. I lost life, and the gentleman over a cup of coffee kind of changed all that.
Sure. Yeah. Well, what's so interesting is that in the beginning it's like you're so involved with yourself, but you're not involved with yourself in the inward way. You're sort of involved with yourself in the outward way. And
right.
But I really enjoy that he's sort of like a charismatic salesman, and seems to know sort of like the right things to say, at the right time. Almost can read your mind and anticipate your next move. I mean, I like the way you sort of wrote that into there. But do you feel that some people are really like that?
I really do. I mean, I've met so many people actually through promoting the book, and I mean, I would have to say Presiding Officer Boltona is a gentleman just like that. Someone who greatly influenced my life. Someone, like the one reason I designed Mr. Mel. He's influential. He has a nice house. He's got a nice car. He's got a lot of toys. So many times that we're taught that wealth is a bad thing. And what I was trying to let people know is, hey, Joseph of Arimathea was wealthy, but he didn't worship his wealth. He just attained wealth, this gentleman, Mr. Mel. And it was actually a way that it kind of lured me in. I was like, wow, look at all this stuff that maybe I can attain. But what I learned through the many lessons that are given in the book is the true meaning of life and the true meaning of wealth. So Mr. Mel, I tell people he's a real character. He's somebody who's influenced me, and I've met so many Mr. Mels in my life. And at the end, you actually learn what Mr. Mel stands for. Right. I think once I don't want to give that away. That's kind of in like the next to the last chapter.
Yeah, we'll get to that, but let's look at he's not in sort of the business. In fact, the way that you bring him in, he's not really selling anything. I mean, he's selling ideas. He's selling like inspiration, and that's what really seems to make him so different in my mind, anyways. And what I'd like to do is maybe just quote from him on page 30, because I thought this was really particularly inspirational to me. It says, "The tone of his voice suddenly changed. It almost became prophetical. 'I teach you my business plan,' he told me, as he drew an arrow down from his circle to my corporation U. 'Then you teach my business plan to others. You help other people learn and grow. As they grow, you also grow.'" And if I could describe the reason that I'm doing this show, that would be it. And I find the reason in your book, and so you're not only a writer, I'm now saying you're a proactive screenwriter. It's so cool to see that, and what will it take, to really pass that along to others? I'm hoping that we'll be able to get it through your book and other things that people like what you're doing.
That would be great. That would be fantastic. And, it's from the heart. I truly believe if you help other people improve themselves, your life is going to be greatly improved. I would have to say that's the sole reason that I got involved in government. I was probably one of the last people you would think would be in government, and I actually sat down with an interview the first time I met Presiding Officer Tona, and I was basically like, why should I come work for you? With a complete attitude. And he shared with me what his plan was, or his vision of government. And I'm kind of a romantic. I watched The West Wing. I really, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, we all have a sense of really what our American spirit is. And I think that's the American spirit. The American spirit isn't looking out for number one. it's helping enrich your nation, enrich your neighbor, enrich your family.
Yeah, and that's really where freedom comes from, and I think that does come out really well, and that is almost the way, I call myself Dr. Proactive, in the way I see the definition of proactive really evolving, is to be someone who has that freedom to think in all those right dimensions. But Mr. Mel also has another really profound statement that I particularly enjoyed. He says, as a people, God wants us to live in harmony, but as individuals, the more appropriate question to ask should be, what does God expect from us? Share with our listeners why Mr. Mel is saying that, and sort of bring that into I guess maybe a setting where they can understand it.
Yeah, I think everyone's always looking for God's plan. What does God want me to do? And I really think God has an expectation of all people. It's love thy neighbor. How do you properly love thy neighbor? I think when how do you treat the person down the road? An incredible story and a lesson I learned from my father. And I may be digressing a little bit, but there was a gentleman on our block. We had to wave to all our neighbors, and basically we had to show respect to our elders. And there was one neighbor who never waved, and my dad caught me not waving back to him, and he taught me a lesson on how important it is to be friendly to someone who's not friendly, because maybe there's something in their heart that's troubling them that they can't be. So if you extend your friendship to that person, you can kind of break through the ice and actually make that person a better person. So God is expecting us to do things, I don't want to say in His name, but do things that aren't just for us, but just for other people.
Mm-hmm,
so it's what He expects from us, which glorifies Him or brings Him, extreme happiness. And I think that's what I was trying to get across there.
Yeah.
And you know what, Randy, the truth is sometimes an angel or the Lord whispers in your ear and tells you to write something down. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. And that's really cool. I really appreciate you following that lead and putting it down, because I really do see it as true, and I love that the thing about the wave, and I've always felt the same thing about a smile. And I really think that proves the whole concept of abundance, where you can give a smile and certainly there's never any lack of smile, and hopefully it only increases and makes someone smile back. There's
giving it's free.
Yep.
Giving away happiness, it's free. And that's incredible if you think about it. And just looking at the world in a positive light. I always tell people when it rains, where else in the universe does the most precious resource fall right from the sky? Rain. We need water more than, everyone wants money to fall from the sky, and we're kind of overlooking the fact that everything that we need is free.
Yeah. You go into a hotel now and you pay what, $5 or $6 for a pint of water?
Right, exactly. Yeah. So giving happiness away is free. Love is a gift that I think the Creator has given all of us, and all we're really expected to do is give it back to somebody else.
Sure. Yeah, and really that is the whole sense of what you're providing here, and I really appreciate that. And there's a really neat little discussion that you've got in there too that I also want to sort of bring out, highlight for our listeners. And it's about the song "The Cat's in the Cradle." And what a neat song that was, and that song really leads to a statement: life is all about relationships. Do you really believe that? And if so, why?
Oh, yeah. Well, Harry Chapin, the author of that song, is a perfect example from that. I mean, I grew up on Long Island. I went to his concerts before his untimely death, and when you went to his concerts, you used to bring canned food, and he was really an activist, and he taught us that there's more to life than than just being. And he's created a foundation on Long Island that's huge, and it Long Island Cares, it's called.
Mm-hmm.
It's this is the largest food bank on Long Island. There's almost 4 million people on Long Island, so he's really done some great things. But yeah, life is all about relationships. Without positive relationships, what do we really have?
Right.
Why do we really exist? I look back at a one job interview I had, and they wanted to know what my greatest accomplishment was. And I sat back, and what raced through my mind was, I was press secretary, and I was, I got a master's degree, and then all of a sudden I just said, you know what? I got some really great friends. I have some fantastic relationships, and my friendships are some of the things that I'm most proud of. They're my greatest accomplishments. And there was a silence in the room because nobody, I guess, ever gave an answer like that. But I truly, it was from my heart.
Yes.
And you could kind of take everything away from me. And, one of the things in Corporation U is you'll discover, I hit rock bottom. And there were certain things that I was ignoring when I hit rock bottom. And I was focusing on the fact that, my credit was now bad, and I had all these bills piled up, and on and on and on. But what I really lost, because I was just so into, monetary things, and trying to find what success really is, that I lost so many relationships along the way. Not that I lost them, I was ignoring them.
Yes.
And then once I stopped ignoring them, life truly improved. And that's, I think, one of the lessons that people will bring away. That's what Corporation U is. You're creating a corporation of relationships. That's where that word comes in. A lot of people, business people, looking at my book, because they see the word corporation in it, and what they discover is, I'm not talking about, some type of Wall Street or something that, will eventually be sold.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's actually a group of people. You form your own conglomerate of relationships.
Absolutely. Yeah. And what I say is that's basically the fifth element of proactive thinking. Basically, is that spiritual thinking of connection, of really forming, that relationship connection, so that you really, I guess it's what it is you become a whole person. That each of us makes up for the lack of others, and I think that you really bring that out in your book. I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
And well, let's talk about this elusive, almost godlike character that you bring into your story. I mean, he sort of silently appears, except for, I guess, the first encounter in which he says, "Don't forget the bacon," as you're going into the store. And it's a phrase that's puzzling all the way up till the end. Was that phrase to show us how we only half listen and maybe only understand things, in just a little ways, or just a small, bit until we actually, really fully come into understanding of our dreams?
Exactly. I think, the fact, and like you said, the readers will discover what "don't forget the bacon" really means. And once you discover "don't forget the bacon," it kind of all makes what it means. It all makes sense.
And don't say what it is. I want the readers to buy your book so they can figure.
Yeah, I'm not going to tell them. Trust me. But yeah, I was half listening. And the message of "don't forget the bacon" it becomes so profound. The fact that it is "don't forget the bacon." You kind of discover in my life, has somebody told me something, or did I receive some message that I was supposed to pass along, but I was just ignoring the important things that I mistranslated a message, or something was going on in somebody else's life and I totally ignored it. Or was a friend trying to reach out for help, and I was just too wrapped up in my own problems that I ignored it. It's as simple as it gets. I could probably talk for hours about it, but that's the real meaning. Open your ears, open your eyes, and focus on what's important.
Cool.
and you'll get the right answers.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, I really, as I guess sort of jokingly said just a couple minutes before was, listeners, this is a profound book, and you really do need to read it and figure out for yourself what it really means to not forget the bacon.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Who Mr. Mel is. I mean, there's three things I think you'll be reading along the way. Mr. Mel, Don't Forget the Bacon, and What God's Plan Is. And maybe it's my screenplay writing background, but I save them all for the end.
Yeah, and I like that.
And I think if you're going to cheat like Harry and Harry Met Sally and read the last chapter first, you're not going to get the message. So, read the whole book. There's secrets that I learned along the way of success that are outlined in the other chapters also.
Yeah. Well, the last thing I really want to bring out to make sure that the listeners hear is there's a short story that you share with Mr. Mel called The Second Prince.
Right.
Give our listeners sort of a real brief outline of that story and why it appears in Corporation U.
One of the reasons that it appears in Corporation U is it's a story of someone, I guess, with misdirected expectations. It's a story of two brothers, which is kind of symbolic to the ending. But it's also both were given special gifts, and both were given keys to a kingdom, but they were more envious of each other's gifts than their own. And basically what happens is that they lose everything that they were given. They were both princes, and they were given the greatest kingdom in the world. And we can kind of all figure out what that alludes to. But yet, one brother envied the other one more, and they lost everything. And so it's kind of telling people again, like, hey, listen, we all have talents, and let's not be envious of somebody else's talent. Find your own. We all have them. And when you do discover your talent and you follow your bliss and you follow your dream and you do what you're supposed to be doing, success is going to come.
Yes, yeah. And if there was ever a thing to be pointed to as far as poverty in the world, that has got to be it, where not everyone is following their dreams, following their bliss, doing what they're really meant to do.
Sure.
They've somehow have come to the thought process or believe the thoughts that they need to do something else that maybe someone else thinks is the right thing for them and that kind of thing. But
right, and what I tried to do with The Second Prince too is I tried to write it in such a way as that if an adult buys this book and gets a meaning, I think you could really sit down with your child and read them The Second Prince, because there's two endings that most people will discover for The Second Prince, and I think if you sit down and you read The Second Prince to your child, it becomes a small little, I don't want to use the word parable, but a little success story for children also. So
cool. Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons I put it in there.
And you did a really good job, and I definitely commend you on actually putting that into this kind of a book. At first, I was sort of wondering, what role that was playing. Then it came obviously very clear at the end. But that was really, I thought, very neat. I was intrigued just reading that story.
Thank you.
Because you actually included in your book, and just for the listeners to know that.
Right. Yeah, and it's actually it's a short story that I did write before I ever wrote Corporation U, and everything works out sometimes for a reason, and it worked out perfect, I think, in that book. Maybe it was the preamble to Corporation U. It was just at my time could kind of explain personally that I was receiving the right messages, but I just wasn't listening at that time. And luckily, I was listening the day that I wrote The Second Prince, and I was able to put it into the full story and get the complete message out.
Super. Yeah, it's sort of like what I call the corridor principle. You're walking down the corridor and you're doing what you need to at the time, but then you find the right door open, and that's where you walk through. So that's neat. Yeah. Well, what I'm going to do is take us to a break, and we're going to come back and
Great.
and enjoy some more of your wisdom in the third section. This is Randy Gilbert on the Inside Success Show, and we are having a wonderful time interviewing James Henry. He's the author of Corporation U, A Business Plan for the Soul, and he has opened up a treasure chest, and he's given away some priceless secrets of success. He does have more for us, so don't go away. Be right back.
Hi, this is Randy Gilbert, and wow, do I have something special for you. If you wish you could spend more time with your family and get paid for doing the work you love, you can. In her book, I Love My Life, my friend Christy T shows you how to start and run your own home-based business. You'll learn how to turn your personal passion into a high-profit business, how to spend more and higher quality time with your family, and how to create your own life and business that you love. Find out more today by visiting theinsidesuccessshow.com and clicking on the I Love My Life book cover logo.
Let's return to the path to triumph with the Inside Success Show.
And welcome back to the Inside Success Show. This is Randy Gilbert, and we are back with James Henry. He is the author of Corporation U, A Business Plan for the Soul. And James, in this third segment, we look at your inside vision of the future. And, I shared in my introduction that I really see an increase in inspirational fiction novels. In fact, even on my show, I've had 3 best-selling ones, which is a good tale for yours, right? The Traveler's Gift, Secrets from Within, and let's see, I did recently a book by Greg Reed, the Millionaire Mentor, and all those were were inspirational, fictional stories. And I really see it as a neat thing that's happening. Is it just me, or do you see that as another trend?
You know what? I don't know if it's a trend. If you look at some of the great writers from Napoleon Hill in the 20s to Og Mandino in the 70s, and on and on. All these, Tony Robbins, all these books. Although Tony Robbins it's nonfiction. People are always looking for the right answers, and sometimes we don't always get them in the books that we read or the television shows that we watch. So maybe it is a trend, but I kind of see that it's something very American. I believe the inspirational novel, and all the way from Thomas Paine till now, Americans have always been interested in stories that uplift and give a positive message, and maybe that's why we're the nation that we are.
That's a very good point. It's a really, really good point, and I really think that it, more and more books are focusing both fiction and nonfiction on helping people to sort of wake up and discover themselves. And I even see that on a global basis. Do you see that yourself too?
I can't speak globally, but I could see it. In the market that I'm in, I could see it on television. You had Touched by an Angel, and that went off the air, and there was a kind of a void. Now you have Amazing Grace. That's one of the reasons my next journey is west to Los Angeles. I just want to bring this positive energy that I discovered and bring it to a new industry.
Good.
And hopefully it'll take off. I mean, the United States is a very, very positive nation.
Absolutely.
And I think that's where our success comes from. And the more books that are out there, I think the more books that people are going to buy that are positive books. And
the same thing with movies and TV shows too. So I definitely applaud what you're doing.
Thanks. And hopefully the trend will continue in that industry. I think that the nation needs it right now. We're I don't want to talk about the war or focus on the war, but we are in a war, and sometimes people are looking for the right answers for certain things, and hopefully I can contribute, and the rest of the authors that are trying to put some inspiration into people's hearts can contribute to some of the sadness that that is going around there. So hopefully we could uplift and let people know there's a brighter tomorrow.
Absolutely.
There's always a brighter tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, children are definitely a part of our brighter tomorrow, and what do you think we can do to help them to really discover, their purpose or their dreams, or just to inspire them to say you can pursue your dreams?
I think it's keep it positive.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the things that you discussed in the beginning is my experience as an educator. And basically what I discovered is, kids are smart. Kids are really smart, but as adults sometimes we're not in their world and we disconnect. And I was actually doing lunch duty with a bunch of kids who were, not the honor students, for lack of a better word, and
okay.
They're 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, and they're playing this game, Yugi, I believe it was called, and it's kind of like a sci-fi game, and some of these cards were in Japanese, and I was asking them, I'm like, how do you know what it says? And they're like, oh, we go online and we translate it, and I'm like, you guys are translating Japanese? So I tapped into that. I was actually teaching science. I was using my wildlife biology background in education and teaching science, and we created comic strips and comic books, and these kids were learning about the water cycle. They were discussing the Kyoto Treaty, all through the creation of comic books. Mm-hmm. And it was just kind of keeping it positive. It was letting them know, like, you have a talent. Everything doesn't come out of a textbook.
Absolutely.
So, keep it positive with kids, keep it real, and let them explore their own talents.
Right, and their own interests too. We homeschooled our kids, and our key to success, because our kids were like extremely motivated all through school, was to always, teach them in their interest area. Right. And that sounds exactly what you're doing with comic strips and things like that, is really tapping into the interest area, get kids excited about learning, because they want to.
Right.
Cool.
Right. And one of the things that I discovered too, I was having comic books in the classroom because I was just I would use them to help me draw some characters. And I used to have to beat the kids off with a stick. The first thing they would do is go to these comic books, and the same kids that other teachers are telling me that they're having problems reading, mm-hmm. and they're zipping through comic books. So it's just I think sometimes when we throw kids in a classroom, it's called the 2x4 education. 2 being the floor and the ceiling and the 4 walls. We're doing them a disservice. Homeschooling, my brother homeschools, and I was in public education, but he's doing homeschooling.
Yeah, same here, of course. And one of the things that I really see is that we can free our minds. And I just want to say again, I really think that your book is one of those things that gives people the opportunity in reading it to really free their mind and actually put themselves into the plot and the story. My upbringing was very different than yours in my experience, but I still felt that I could actually be there myself in the way you wrote it. So that was really neat.
Great, thank you.
And how about the future of James Henry? You're obviously a man in pursuit of a dream. What goals do you have planned for the next couple of years?
Well, without sounding too cocky, my goal in life has always been, the highest paid screenplay writer in the world. So I have my goals very high. I just want to create something that's positive in Hollywood. Like I said, I'm moving out in February. Have a bunch of friends who are very successful in the mm-hmm. industry, and they basically called me and said, "It's your time to come out." Just kind of like Dave David Fireman inspiring me to get this corporation you published. I'm blessed. I have friends that actually say, "Hey, you're talented enough to compete out here. Come out here." I'm blessed to have a wife that said, "Okay, yeah, let's do it." Mm-hmm. So, I have the screenplay writing. I'm working on another book, a short novel called Herod's Daughter. I was always intrigued with the character Salome, and she's mentioned very briefly in the New Testament. She's the daughter who actually asked for John the Baptist's head, and
Mm-hmm.
just kind of working with students. I often thought, like, man, how would that have really affected a teenage girl? So I sat down with a couple of counselors and really discussed that, and then kind of take her through a journey through ancient Israel and the Middle East and Rome, and it's kind of a historic perspective, but it's also enlightening, and hopefully it's also a message to the children who have had a rough time in life. Hopefully it'll be a message to them that they can succeed no matter what their background or their past has been. So, that's a project I'm working on. And my screenplays, I have several screenplays, and hopefully I can go out to California and be successful.
Good.
Getting my message out, or getting a message out.
Appreciate that, and appreciate you sharing that. And I've interviewed one other person that actually did the book and then produced a movie based on her book, and I really applaud what you're doing. Well, we're down just to the last few moments of the show. Is there any other inside success secrets that you could share with our listeners? It could be something totally different than your book.
Gosh. That's a great question. I wish I had an answer to it. I think just follow your bliss. Okay. I hate to plagiarize Joseph Campbell, but I think and I tell my nieces and nephews this, I left Long Island when I was 18 years old to go to Montana to be a wildlife filmmaker, and I'm now a writer. And I think the reason that I was successful along the way is I just always followed my bliss. And Montana led me to the film festival, that led me to the New School, that, my writing actually led me to government, to work with a presiding officer, Tona, and a staff of great people, and accomplishing great things, meeting, senators and, other people. So just, if you want something, pursue it, and you'll get to where you're supposed to be.
Good.
I think that's more important than anything. You're going to get what you need. Just follow your heart, and you'll get what you need.
Well, I appreciate that. That is real wisdom, and I'm sure our listeners enjoyed hearing that, and I'm hoping that they'll all put that into practice, because it's absolutely true.
And hopefully our educators will start, teaching something like that to our young children.
I think many do, and I totally agree with you. And more need to, and sometimes kids just need to take the bull by the horns and just say, "I'm going to do it no matter what my teacher says."
You're right. Be stubborn. I have to say that's half the reason I'm where I am today.
That's great.
Stubborn, not letting people tell you you can't do it. What did Henry Ford say? If you say you can or you say you can't, you're right.
Yeah, exactly. Yep, very good. Well, James, you've been very generous with your time. You've given us just some great inside success secrets through the discussion and in your book, of course, and just really appreciate, on behalf of all listeners, thank you so much for being my guest. You're wonderful, and I'm hoping to have you back on again in the future, perhaps when you're done with your next book.
That'd be great. There's two people, besides my wife, Jennifer Dubkowski, who I really need to thank, is my editor, Jackie Toney, and my editor when I was a press secretary, Barbara Waugh. So without those two people as editor and my wife as support, I don't know where I'd be today.
Oh, you're wonderful, and that's a good way to share the acknowledgement around. That's really, really good. And to our listeners, you don't want to miss our next show, so go to the website, theinsidesuccessshow.com, and sign up for our free Inside Success newsletter. And, of course, without you, our listeners, James and I would just be doing this for fun.
Well, we do it for fun anyway.
We do, okay. and while you're there, please check out our sponsors. They're helping to bring this show to you, so if you could please help them out. This has been Randy Gilbert bringing you the Inside Success Show. Remember that success starts on the inside, and that's why so many successful people are listening to the Inside Success Show. Until next time, blue skies and rainbows to you all. And James, again, thank you so much, and I really do hope we get to do this again in the future.
Oh, I would love to.